Oscar Piastri, the home favourite, has hit the wall. He said he's okay, but extraordinarily, we've already lost a McLaren from this race. Over the curb, off the curb, into the wall, out of the Grand Prix. Absolutely extraordinary.
Forget the results. The 2026 Australian Grand Prix may have just confirmed Formula One's biggest fear. The new hybrid era is out of control. Oscar Piastri spun into the wall before the race even started. Several drivers warned the cars are undriveable. And yet Mercedes delivered a dominant 1-2, like they saw this rulebook coming months early. If this is how round one looked, the rest of the season could be an absolute disaster, or the beginning of a new super team. Oscar Piastri's crash didn't just silence the Australian crowd. It sent shockwaves through every garage in the pit lane. What looked like a simple reconnaissance lap suddenly turned into the first real demonstration of how violent the 2026 hybrid systems can be. As Piastri downshifted over the Turn 4 curb, the McLaren's energy management system triggered an unexpected 100 kilowatt surge from the MGUK. In an instant, the rear tyres received a torque hit equal to nearly 13% of the car's total power, delivered with no warning and no ramp-up. Cold tyres, low grip, uneven curbing. All three combined at the exact moment the hybrid system hit its maximum deployment spike. And because the 2026 regulations now allow the electrical system to contribute almost half of the car's total output, that spike wasn't a gentle push. It was a punch. The rear snapped immediately. No oversteer correction, no save, no chance. 1 second he was warming up the car. The next, he was sliding backwards into the wall, ending his home race before the formation lap even began. But here's why this moment matters. This wasn't a rookie error. It wasn't driver misjudgment. It was a symptom of a much bigger, much more dangerous problem. The new hybrid systems can deliver power so suddenly and so aggressively that even elite drivers are being caught out. Inside the paddock, engineers have been whispering the same fear for months. The new energy deployment maps can behave unpredictably, especially when the battery has just recharged. If the system decides to release that stored energy at the wrong moment, mid-corner, over curbs, or during downshifts, the car becomes almost impossible to control. And Piastri's crash proved that in the most brutal way imaginable. One spike, one deployment error, one instant, and the new era of Formula One was exposed before the lights even went out. What happened to Oscar Piastri wasn't a freak accident. Earlier in the weekend, Mercedes rookie Andrea Kimi Antonelli suffered a similar scare during practice when he accelerated over the Turn 1 curb and the hybrid system delivered a sudden burst of torque. The rear stepped out instantly, forcing him into a full correction just to keep the car pointing straight. Different team, different driver, same problem. These new power units don't behave like the previous hybrids. Under the 2026 rules, the electric system can release torque with almost no delay. And when it does, it hits the rear tyres harder than most teams expected. Engineers knew the cars would be more aggressive, but nobody predicted they would be this sensitive over curbs, bumps, or mid-corner downshifts. And that's what makes this so dangerous. If a battery deployment spike can destabilize the car at low speeds and low grip, then every lap becomes a balancing act. Drivers are now fighting unpredictable bursts of power while managing tyres, energy harvesting, and the new aerodynamic behaviour, all at once. And after Melbourne, teams are starting to realise that the limit of these 2026 cars isn't set by speed, it's set by control. While McLaren, Ferrari, and even Red Bull were wrestling with the unpredictable torque spikes of the new hybrid era, one team looked disturbingly comfortable from the moment the race began: Mercedes. George Russell lost the lead at the start, but only for 2 laps. By lap 3, he had already reclaimed P1 from Charles Leclerc with acceleration that didn't just look strong, it looked controlled, stable, predictable. Everything the other teams didn't have. Telemetry comparisons from the opening stint revealed the truth. Mercedes were gaining 2 to 3 tenths every time they exited slow corners, especially at turns 3 and 14, the most critical traction zones at Albert Park. Where others struggled to manage the sudden hit of electric torque, Mercedes deployed their hybrid power smoothly, cleanly, and far more efficiently. And that's when the paddock started whispering. Because this wasn't just aerodynamic balance. It wasn't tyre temperature. It wasn't driver confidence. It was something deeper. The early data suggested Mercedes had mastered their energy deployment strategy in a way no other team had. Their battery delivered power without the unpredictable surges that caught out Piastri and nearly sent Antonelli into the wall. Instead, the W15E behaved like the only car on the grid that fully understood the new regulations and how to exploit them. While others were reacting, Mercedes were executing. And that shift didn't just win them the race. It exposed a gap that might already be too big for some teams to close. As Mercedes pulled away effortlessly at the front, teams on the pit wall began analysing the data, and none of it made sense. The W15E wasn't just deploying energy earlier, it was deploying more of it, and doing so more frequently than anyone believed was possible under the new hybrid limits. And that's when a quiet rumour started circulating through the paddock. Some engineers believe Mercedes may have uncovered a compression ratio interpretation in the 2026 engine regulations, a loophole that allows their internal combustion engine to operate more efficiently under certain conditions. If that theory is true, it means Mercedes can recover more electrical energy during each lap, without breaking a single rule. More combustion efficiency means more heat and pressure. More heat and pressure means more harvesting potential. More harvesting means more battery deployment. And in 2026, battery deployment is straight-line speed. Suddenly, the pieces fit together. Russell's effortless overtakes. Antonelli's consistent traction. Ferrari's inability to close the gap even on fresher tyres. The stability Mercedes enjoyed while others fought the car. The advantage wouldn't come from horsepower. It would come from hybrid availability. More power, more often, with fewer penalties. And the most concerning part? The FIA has already hinted that if such a loophole exists, it won't be closed until June. That means Mercedes could run the first 6 or 7 races with a built-in hybrid advantage that nobody else can match. A loophole that isn't illegal, but is impossible to catch up to mid-season. Ferrari didn't collapse in Melbourne, far from it. Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton showed that the SF26 is absolutely one of the frontrunners under the new regulations. Their pace through medium-speed corners looked strong, their tyre management was solid, and they had enough raw speed to pressure Mercedes whenever the hybrid systems were equal. But that was the problem. The hybrid systems were almost never equal. During the opening stint, Leclerc stayed close enough to attack Russell if he made a mistake. Yet every time they exited a slow corner, the same pattern appeared. The Ferrari would hit its deployment limit early, while the Mercedes kept pushing with consistent electric power all the way down the straights. Even when Ferrari committed to an aggressive long-run strategy, keeping both cars out during the virtual safety car, the expected payoff never came. On fresher tyres, Leclerc was gaining time, but only around 1/10 per lap. At that rate, the gap to Russell simply wasn't going to close. Ferrari had pace. Ferrari had control. Ferrari had a strong package. But Mercedes had something more. A hybrid system that delivered power with a stability and efficiency no other team could match. Leclerc and Hamilton drove near-perfect races to secure 3rd and 4th, proving Ferrari are absolutely title contenders. But Melbourne made one thing clear. If Mercedes really do have a deployment advantage baked into their design, even frontrunners like Ferrari will need weeks, if not months, to catch up. Mercedes didn't stumble into a strong result. They controlled the Australian Grand Prix from the moment the race settled. George Russell's win wasn't just dominant, it looked comfortable, something we haven't seen from Mercedes in years. His pace on the hard tyres was consistent, stable, and unaffected by the aggressive energy demands that were punishing other teams. But the real surprise was behind him. Kimi Antonelli delivered a statement drive the entire paddock felt. In his very first race as a full-time Mercedes driver, he matched Russell's pace, managed the tyres with veteran-level composure, and executed a flawless strategy to secure second place. It wasn't luck, it wasn't chaos, it was performance. A 1-2 finish in a brand new regulatory era isn't normal, it's a warning. Teams prepare for rule resets years in advance, and whoever understands the new regulations first usually sets the tone for the entire cycle. If a team shows this level of dominance in round one, the rest of the field starts asking the same terrifying question. How much earlier did they figure this out than we did? Because Mercedes didn't just build a fast car. They built a car that behaves the way the new 2026 machinery should behave. Stable deployment, efficient harvesting, predictable torque, everything the rest of the grid is currently fighting with. And that's why their 1-2 mattered more than the points. It proved Mercedes came into this era already ahead of the curve, already confident, and already in control of the most complicated hybrid system Formula One has ever seen. If this continues for even a few races, catching them won't just be difficult. It could become mathematically impossible. While Mercedes celebrated a perfect start to the season, the rest of the grid delivered a very different message. These new 2026 cars are not enjoyable to drive, and some of the most experienced drivers on the grid didn't hold back. Max Verstappen was the first to fire the warning shot, openly admitting after the race that he wasn't enjoying driving these cars at all. That wasn't frustration from a bad result. It was a criticism of the entire philosophy behind the new regulations. For a driver who built his legacy on high-speed commitment, the 2026 machines feel completely unnatural. Lando Norris echoed the same concerns. Carlos Sainz hinted at it during testing. Even experienced veterans privately admitted the cars feel unstable and unpredictable. And the reason is something fans rarely see: super clipping. Under the new rules, drivers must intentionally slow down in fast corners so the engine can harvest electrical energy. If the battery isn't charged, the car can temporarily drop to just 150 kilowatts, barely 20% of its maximum 750 kilowatt output. That means drivers aren't pushing flat out anymore. They're gaming the hybrid system, backing off the throttle in sections where they used to attack, all just to avoid running out of deployment later in the lap. It doesn't matter how brave you are. It doesn't matter how skilled you are. If the battery is empty, you're slow. No exceptions. This completely changes how a qualifying lap is built, how racecraft evolves, and how close drivers can follow each other. The 2026 cars demand energy management like endurance prototypes, not the all-out aggression Formula One is known for. And here's the real issue. If top drivers are already frustrated in round one, and the grid is still learning how to optimize harvesting and deployment, then the learning curve for this era may be far steeper than anyone expected. Everything that happened in Melbourne leads to one final, unavoidable question. Nobody actually knows what the real competitive order of 2026 is yet. Because the rule book itself might be the biggest variable in the sport. If Mercedes truly unlocked a hybrid interpretation no one else saw coming, then the opening races could become a points harvesting spree that decides the title before most teams even understand their own cars. But if their advantage is only temporary, if it disappears the moment the FIA steps in, then the entire championship could swing violently mid-season. And that uncertainty is now hanging over every team. Is McLaren's pace real once they fix the deployment spike? Will Ferrari's traction issues vanish as they refine energy mapping? Can Red Bull solve the superclipping problems that are slowing Verstappen in high-speed corners? Or will Mercedes continue writing their own script for the new hybrid era? Because Melbourne didn't just reveal who was fast, it revealed who was ready. And the question nobody can answer yet is this: did Mercedes simply build the best 2026 car? Or did they unlock a technical edge that the rest of the grid won't understand until it's already too late? Check out this next video from More Than Speed.